Alrighty, so welcome to the first and inaugural episode, I suppose, of Airtime with Jordan. Just a little bit about me and a bit of intro on why I decided to make this podcast and get it going. Is that I'm a long time sports lover. Decided to make a podcast to focus on celebrating one of the best sports in the world, AFL. And I find there's just a lot of nonsense and bickering in the AFL media, and I kind of wanted to create a space that still talks about the game with detail and facts, but incorporates the fans' perspective as well. So a bit about me. I've come from a tech background, so I'm hoping my combination for the love of the game and a bit of analytical skills sort of fills a void in the current footy media landscape. So tune in and let me run my mouth a little bit about the latest topics in the game. I will preface this by saying it wouldn't be a true podcast for the fans if I didn't declare my love, and first and foremost that is for the Hawthorn Footy Club. I will be transparent about that, and it's probably a good time to be starting this podcast from a Hawks perspective, because I'll be honest, it wouldn't have been as sexy or glowing in the last couple of years, but credit to Sam Mitchell and the rest of the club for turning around and what was becoming a bit of an unwatchable team in the previous couple of years, so I'm glad that that's happened. Probably not the best week to be starting, given the rough weekend they had down in Geelong. I thought I was pretty optimistic going into it, but I'll take the last sort of 10 weeks before that, and take the good and the bad, I guess. Just on that game, Geelong were too good. I'll give it, as much as it pains me to say, the bodies of Dangerfield and Tom Stewart in the middle really put our mids on the back foot from the get-go, and not having Sicily obviously hurt too, and not being able to use the width of the ground that the Hawks usually sort of take advantage of and sort of tack up the wing and change direction going up the wing and into the corridor. Definitely hurt them a bit, I thought, but credit to Geelong, they were solidified themselves after the previous week as well. So they're definitely on the up, and should be competitive in the finals again. But just on the Hawks, I think that the turnaround in the previous few weeks, I still want to have a bit of a chat about. Pretty happy about it, but having some flair up forward without the presence over that period with a genuine key tall, and it was kind of shit to see Mitch Lewis go down again, but that's all right. Hopefully he makes a recovery, but with that sort of great run we had was without a key forward, and they had Colshadir, Gunston and Marviel Chol, but none of them are the stereotypical big key power forward. Definitely not at the moment anyway in Colsh's case, so we'll see where that goes. But I think if they can sort of manage to find someone to fill that void a bit, then they might be cooking with gas in the forward line a little bit more. But I think during the week as well, last week I heard David King on SEN talking about them not standing out in necessarily in any one area, apart from being able to be a good contested ball team and be a good centre bounce clearance team. So I think that it's not necessarily a bad thing that they're standing out in one area over that period. They've shown an ability to win in different ways. I think that the constant of the mids getting on top of the set of bounces definitely a fair point, and that might be driving a bit of it. But I think that they've haven't had to rely on any one way of winning, and that sort of can be a good thing as well. 1 week they might be scoring from the back half, and next week it'll be from stoppages or from turnover or whatever. So I think that they're definitely trending in the right direction, and they're pretty looking pretty even at the moment. I wouldn't say there's one line of the team backs, mids or forwards that's any better than the others, but I think they're building a good profile. But especially I will say that I'm not saying this is our best part of our lineup at the moment, but I think that the defensive profile is pretty exciting, despite what we saw on the weekend. I spoke about not having Sicily, but when over that period when we have had pretty healthy team, you've had Scrimshaw, Sicily, Weddle, Frost to a lesser degree. Those four guys, I guess they've shown an ability to be switchable and versatile as a defensive unit. So I think that sort of term switchability and the concept is kind of derived from the NBA a little bit, where you've got like defenders who are capable of matching up on different types of players, and I think that the combination of those, the three main ones are specifically Scrimshaw, Sisley, and Weddle can play like small and tall a little bit, and all very capable of intercepting as well, which is very very useful thing. So I think that the combination they've got back in the defensive half has been really really good at the moment. I think as well you've got Carl Amon and Massimo D'Ambrosio as well, who are elite left foot kicks. So being able to have those guys to change angles and head back into the corridor from the back half has been really really impressive for the Hawks. And I think that's sort of been a lot's been talked about the mids in the centre bounce with Newcomb and Warple and Will Day and the emergence of Lloyd Meek, but I think that those back half guys have been very very underrated, and well, not Sicily but maybe some of the others have gone a little bit under the radar, and I think that they're worth shouting out. But I guess that leads me into talking about the elephant in the room between the Hawks and the St Kilda Footy Club and Josh Battle. So I think that he fits perfectly into that sort of defensive profile. I think the ability to play small, tall, use the ball, intercept is clearly what Sam Mitchell's looking for back there, and it's not unlike the Geelong backline they faced on the weekend, where you've got Colin Jasny and Jack Henry, both of whom can play either role when needed. And I think that that's sort of like where backlines probably are progressing to. You still might need your big hulking fullback at some point, but I think that the more teams you look through most lists, and teams are starting to build those sort of players who can play a bit more versatile. So I guess hopefully I would love the Hawks to snag Josh Battle. I think he's a pretty good player, and hopefully they can continue to flesh out that back line a bit, and maybe that frees up Weddle to go into the midfield in the years to come. But that remains to be seen. But won't get too far ahead of me. But I guess another point I want to touch on in this inaugural podcast is sort of related to the Josh Battle and the Saints, but I just wanted to focus a bit more on St Kilda in general, and well, maybe more specifically Max King and the Saints. His season's obviously over now. They've announced he's got a PCL injury, so they had a good win on the weekend against the Swans, so I guess that's probably a good place to start. They had the win over the Swans with a bit of a smaller forward line. You got your Mitch Owens, and Tim Embry came into the team as well, so like they were two main key forwards along with Cooper Sharman. So they had a little bit of those like smaller sort of guys leading the key positions up there, and then you had your Higgins and Butler around them as well. So I think that having that smaller forward line, probably much in the same way that the Hawks did the first few weeks, has made them a little bit more unpredictable, rather than just focusing on Max King each time. But you had like a clear shift in Rowan Marshall's positioning over the last couple of weeks against Port and then against Sydney, where he was definitely drifting forward a lot more rather than staying out of the forward 50 and anticipating that sort of rebound from the teams. He's definitely pushing forward, and you saw a few times him outwork Grundy and got some good marks up forward, and kicked some goals. So I think that pushing him forward definitely gives him another point of difference up there, especially with Maxi King out. So for the rest of the year, but it's another way for them to score for a team that's at times struggled to score. So I think that sort of leads me to say, like, where does Big Maxi fit in next year? I'm definitely not saying that the Saints are better without him. Let me make that clear. There's no doubt the ceiling on the Saints would be higher when Max is playing at his best. And I'm not going to be one of those people that calls them to trade him, because you don't get rid of talented key forwards like that. As I was touching on the Hawks, they would be the first in line to try and pry him out of the Saints' hands. But as a St Kilda Footy Club, I think that you're definitely keeping him, and you're definitely trying to extend him to whatever contract. But it's just more about getting the best out of him, I think. And I don't think that's, some people have called for that to be for him to play second ruck, and that's clearly not an option. Like his body hasn't taken hits up playing up as a key forward, let alone playing in the ruck as a pinch hitter. So I think that you definitely want to leave Rowan Marshall in there, but maybe provide a second option other than Max King to allow Rowan Marshall to play forward a bit more, like we've seen in the last couple of weeks. So I think as for Max, I think we should. I'm going to take a bit of a deeper dive into the issues he's facing with his performance, specifically this year compared to I'll compare it to a couple of years ago, because last year he had a lot of injuries. Played quite well actually. When he did play, I think he only managed about 11 or 12 games last year. So yeah, that's probably the excuse for last year. But I think that, and again this year, he's unfortunately been cut down by injury. But I think the 2022 season, it was his third season. Looked like he was going to have a breakout year, and I was as high on Max King as probably anyone was at the time. I will declare again, my old man is a Saints fan, long suffering. So I probably wanted him to be good more than, and sort of had a bit of rose-coloured glasses. Looking at him, especially as he was labelled as the heir to Nick Riewoldt, I guess. Although probably about 5-6 years later. But I think that season specifically, the 2022 season. Well, look at his stats as that we sort of benchmark for key forwards. He had 52 goals in 22 games, so that's an average of 2.36. He averaged 2.18 contested marks. 6.2 score involvements he had, and then comparing those sort of figures to this year, he's had 98 goals in 11 games, so a drop off of about 0.8 of a goal this year compared to that breakout sort of season. He's had about 0.7 less contested marks, so he's only averaging 1.5 this year versus 2.18, as I said, in 2022. His scoring involvements have dropped by 1.2, which pretty much, as I said, with the goals, he's dropped by almost a goal a game, so that's almost pretty much solely due to his own ability to hit the scoreboard. And then, you might be thinking the Saints, the Saints under Ross, they've had a clear coaching difference, and Ross tends to play those more defensive games and game style sort of thing. But I had a look at the scores with him in 2022 versus 2024, the games that he did play, and there's only a drop off of 4 points per game between those two teams. So I don't think that I don't necessarily think the opportunities have dwindled for Max. I think that maybe it's definitely a slump in form is due to him, and obviously the Saints aren't playing as well as they were last year. But I don't think that we can attribute Max's season. And now that it's in the books, the 2024 season, to just being a bit of regression from St Kilda themselves. I think definitely Max probably needs to take accountability for not being playing at his best footy, and I still think that he's absolutely capable of it. So I think that his drop off is maybe less about St Kilda and more about himself at the moment. Obviously, without knowing all the information that St Kilda have within their four walls and whatever Max is thinking as well. But I think that the narrative about St Kilda being the issue is probably not quite true. I think that key forwards over the last few years have shown that you can still perform if the team isn't. Specifically, probably the absolute best example of this is Nick Larkey, where he kicked 71 goals in 23 games, so he averaged 3 goals a game in one of the worst teams you'll see going around, unfortunately for North last year, who are looking a bit better at the moment. But still, I think Nick Larkey's ability to kick those goals and in a team that really struggled to, albeit he was the primary focus, so he had a few more targets inside 50 probably, but I think that it wouldn't hurt. I think that along with many others, Max King probably needs to take hold of his position a bit more, much in the way that Larkey did at North Melbourne, and sort of be that driving force that I'm gonna hold my own each week, and you can rely on me. So I think that part of Max King's game can start to evolve. And I mean, Nick Larkey, mind you, is 2 years older than Max King, so without a lot of the hype that Max came into the league with. But I think that's a different sort of pressure. But now that's sort of put back on Max, and he needs to figure it out. I think that if Nick Larkey's capable of doing it in North Melbourne colours, then I think there's no reason Max can't bounce back next year and get back to that sort of 2022 form. And unfortunately for him, we have a twin for him to compare him to, which is no fault of Max's. He's just unlucky in that regard. But I know he's off for the rest of the year, but it's just something to think about. And I think that like those sort of drop-offs, you can sort of say that it's definitely like an individual drop-off. I don't necessarily think you're attributing it to the team. So like I'm still a big Max King believer, and I reckon if he can just have a clean off season and get back to his best, then it'll be pretty exciting for the Saints, especially with the other talent they've got coming through. You've got Nazai Wanganeen-Malira, Mateus Phillip, who finally played a really, really good game on the weekend after some strong form in the VFL. So I think that they're definitely capable of having a bit of a bounce back next year. And while they've got some of the older boys that are still playing good footy with their main sort of three like Cal Wilkie and Sinclair and Rowan Marshall, they're not all crazy old or anything, but I think that the Saints could be due for a bit of a bounce back year next year if everything goes right for them. I'll move on to the Essendon Bombers after their big win against Collingwood on the weekend. Obviously, big crowd, 85,000 or so there, and going into the game, people were sort of a bit sceptical of Essendon, whether they'll repeat the trend of the last few years, or maybe not in the last few years, but being a bit inconsistent after the sort of 2/3 point of the season. And not to be a bit of a party pooper, but like even after that game on the weekend, I'm still not the biggest believer in them. I think that, well, not for this year anyway. I think like no doubt they're more stable, but again, like I'm not going to trust them against the absolute top teams. They've had this, like if we include the Pies on the weekend and GWS, when they beat them, they've gotten away with two quality wins, I would say, over the most part of the season. But they've gotten away with beating people who they're meant to, and then like maybe not having those great wins that some of the best teams in the comp do against other great teams. So I think one way that I can sort of like exemplify this is through the AFL tables and the guys that luckily give us a data analysis package called Fitzroy online. We're able to sort of pull some of these stats, but I think the last time that there was a team in the top four after round 17 with a percentage lower than 100, we have to go all the way back to Geelong in 2000, who were fourth with a percentage of 96.8%, so a little bit worse shape than Essendon, but they ended up finishing fifth that year, Geelong, and got bounced by Hawthorn in the first round of the finals, who finished eighth. So I know just one team, obviously, and but you got to go a long way back for a team to be in the top four that's performed like that badly comparative to with relation to their percentage, and to be in the finals in the top four at that point of the year. So I think that what that sort of shows is they've copped that main beating against Port Adelaide earlier in the year, which obviously dropped the percentage quite a bit, but like even the games they have won have definitely not been by much. And I think that a weird parallel between them and St Kilda is the number of games that have been decided by under 10 to 15 points, and that's sort of shown in their percentage. I think that they could quite easily be outside of the 8 if those results didn't go the right way. So you got to give them the credit for winning those close games, much in the same way that Collingwood last year got the credit for winning all those close games. But I think that the issue is that like where that top end talent's sort of going to come from for Essendon. I think obviously you've got Zach Merritt, who's just unbelievable in general. We know what he does, but specifically this year, like his ball use is as good as ever, and for a smaller guy, the way that he defends out of the midfield and runs two ways, it's very noticeable how much ground he covers, and like just seems to pop up in important moments. And I think that first sort of quarter on the weekend against the Pies was a pretty good example of that, just like willing his team into the game a bit. And he's the main sort of constant. They've had issues up forward a little bit. Like you sort of rely on Jake Stringer to kick goals, and Tuamini-Peter's not really playing as well since his suspension, so I think that whether that sort of took some of the aggression out of his game, I don't know. But yeah, that sort of forward unit I'm not like super strong on in terms of being able to kick a winning score, and that's sort of reflected in their percentage. I think I don't want to be too negative about them. Obviously, I'm big Zach Merrett fan, and I'll touch on some of the positives that I think I've seen from them, which sort of make me think that they're still a couple years away, because the positives are sort of centered around some of the younger guys. So you've got Harry Jones and Nick Cox, who are coming along well, and getting more solid each week, and definitely show moments, and that's what you want to see from younger players. You want to see them you perform in moments, and not necessarily be consistent across 4 quarters, but that if they have more of those moments, then in a couple of years, that will be a consistent performance from those guys. I think, Sam Durham has been a great pickup from the mid-season draft. I believe he's going to be a perennial Australian contender, and he's that young star that has been a great running mate for Zach Merrett in terms of getting the ball forward and playing with that ballistic sort of nature that he does. I think that been very impressed by him. And then like the sort of main part that I'm not worried about, or like just want to highlight, that could be cause for them to sort of get playing a bit better next year, and maybe in the later half of this year. Maybe this is where the sort of growth and trust I have in Essendon comes from, is that Redmond, Ridley and Mackay have only played 5 games now. Sorry, I got this stat last week, but they've only played 5 games together at the moment for the year. So as those guys continue to build some chemistry in that back line, they should start to repel some more attacks, because until the game on the weekend where the Pies scored 80 points, they were averaging 92 points per game against as a team. I know it's not all on those 3 defenders when those guys were playing, but they've only had those 5 games now together. So I think that as they start to string a few more together, they'll know Ridley can hold his opponent, and maybe Mackay can intercept, and vice versa, and you'll see those guys start to play a bit better together, I think, as they build that natural chemistry. So I think that although there's some like really good signs from the Dons, and I do believe that they're going to be a really, really good team again next year, with some bit of tinkering in the list as they sort of go into the off season. I think that in general, I just don't know if they have the talent to necessarily compete in the finals this year. Especially when all the other teams are keyed in a bit more on what Essendon are going to do with some of their inside taggers, with Durham and Jai Caldwell as well, and sort of expecting that, and sort of twisting that to their own benefit a bit more, I guess, rather than just sort of that week-to-week tactics that go on. But I think that when all those other teams have their firepower up and running, then I don't know if the Dons necessarily have the same amount to match it, especially coupling that with the lack of chemistry that the defensive six might have at the moment. But I'm still definitely high on them for next year. But this year they've not done quite enough for me to believe that they're going to get there. And as I said, that sort of percentage statistic is the one that I'm going to hold on to for the moment anyway. Head into where I'm at with the Premiership race at the moment. I think for me it's still Carlton and Sydney at the top. I know they both lost on the weekend, but there's going to be ebbs and flows for those sort of contending teams. They've been en masse pretty formidable all season, both of them, and competitive with all the good teams. So I think that that's sort of, there's definitely still the two standouts, and not just piggybacking on their win over the weekend, although the Doggies did have a couple missing with injury. But I'm still on the Port bandwagon. But I'll start with Sydney, and I guess that their midfield and ruck combination has been much talked about all year, and the ability for those guys to score and hit the scoreboard, and I think it's sort of following that West Coast Eagles model from the mid-2000s, where you've got your dynamic sort of nature of the team sort of comes through the middle, and with your Judd, Kirk Cousins and Cox. So I think that Sydney have sort of emulated that a little bit, and they're just good. and I trust a lot of their players. Their forward line, I know that they don't necessarily have that big star forward, but they've got three guys who can play a role and bring their like sort of star forwards who are a bit on the smaller side in Papley's case, and Will Hayward's there as well to bring those guys into the game. You need big key forwards, and Amadi, McLean, and Logan McDonald have shown all year that they're willing to compete and create a contest, and that's sort of the easiest way that you can bring those small forwards into the game. And I think that having those guys there, and then like in Papley and Hayward at the feet of those big fellas, and then you have like the big three of the midfield running through and cleaning up and kicking goals from stoppages in the forward 50 or breaking 50 and kicking goals. You've got enough scoring talent to win the big games, I think, and they're definitely still probably my favourite. Although Carlton have shown over the last few weeks until that GWS performance that they're probably thereabouts as well. I think that on Carlton they definitely have the spine to compete with the absolute best teams, and their role players just super consistent. I think that you've got guys like Wiedering, who's, when he's healthy, which we saw on the weekend was an issue, so hopefully he stays healthy, but when healthy he's an absolute defence by himself. And then you've got like a perfect complement of players around him. You've got Brody Kemp, who I think they said on the broadcast, but he's probably played the best game where he's had 5 goals kicked on him I've seen. So that guy he can play like a little bit smaller or play on the big tall guys, and he's actually a pretty good kick as well. So I like his fit back there. And then you got Jordan Boyd just does not lose contests. Probably didn't have the best game on the weekend, but for the year been very, very consistent. So been very impressed with Jordan Boyd. And then you've obviously got Newman and Saad, 2 great left foot kicks out of the back line, and just competitive beasts. Like Nick Newman, I think that Carlton fans probably haven't had that sort of arsehole in their team for a long time, but I think he's that guy. I think that he is the driving force back there in terms of setting the attitude, and like he plays with like that competitive nature that you love to see, and love if he's on your team, and probably hate to play against, but I think that those two together have Saad and Newman have been great from the back half, and Newman specifically, like he's probably been the staple back there, with Wiedering missing a bit of time during the year, and Saad as well. So he's just been I guess playing that bit of an architect role back there. So I think that Nick Newman is definitely in All-Australian contention, and like he's definitely more than a role player. So I think he's definitely deserves to have his season acknowledged. And also on Carlton, I think that we saw on the weekend that a lot's hinging on Tom de Koning a little bit. I think that he needs to prove that he can do it against everyone. He had that great patch of form before he was a late withdrawal the week before this one. I can't remember, sorry, off the top of my head, but I just want him to prove that he can do it against everyone. I think all ruckmen to a degree probably come up against someone that they aren't going to dominate every matchup they have. I remember probably a good example of this for those who remember, but Max Gawn did not like playing against Tom Hickey when Hickey was at the Saints and Sydney. He didn't have his normal dominance that he sort of become accustomed to having against the other ruckman in the competition. So whether that was just a situation for Tom de Koning on the weekend where he just couldn't compete with Briggs around in the ruck primarily, but then even around the ground, Briggs sort of punished him and has that similar sort of play style where he's pretty handy around the ground and pretty mobile. But I guess the worry with Tom de Koning is that he's maybe not going to hit those high notes every week, and you probably think that the rest of the competition saw what Kieran Briggs did in the ruck and took away his run and jump, and therefore just got into his body quite early in the ruck contests and didn't give him that like aerial dominance. And not what that does is not just taking Tom de Koning out of the game where you got those quick clearances where he was sort of scooping the ball up and forcing it forward, but he's also not getting it up in the ruck to be able to feed Cripps and Walsh for the service that they've been getting over the last few weeks. So yeah, I guess like the selection committee at Carlton has that decision to make whether they're going to play Pitto against those more physical ruckmen that maybe teams are a bit more confident playing against Tom de Koning now. That's who it was. It was against Nankervis. They didn't play him against Richmond. Yeah, but yeah. So it's the selection. Being a selector at Carlton probably wouldn't be it's not a bad problem to have between Pitto and Tom de Koning, and Tom's always going to be in the side when healthy. But yeah, they probably needed Pitto against GWS in the end, in hindsight, and especially with Wiedering getting that corky again, they might have been able to leverage that and put Tom de Koning behind the ball and give them a bit more size with Jacob Wiedering a bit hampered. So as I said, a good selection problem to have, but I think that going forward, yeah, it's just one to watch on Tom de Koning. I think as well what GWS did really well was tagging Sam Walsh with Toby Bedford, so it worked pretty well. He didn't have the same impact he has had in the last sort of 5-6 weeks on the game, so I think it worked perfectly for them, and not every team will have someone that can go with Sam Walsh's like aerobic capacity for 4 quarters, but definitely the blueprint's there. He isn't the most physical player like Cripper, who, Cripps is possibly one, and Bont probably two of the hardest blokes to tag in the comp just from their sheer size alone as midfielders. But yeah, I think that's another one to watch for other teams, is just to see how Walsh responds to some of these tags. He's only going to be able to get away from people with, his 4-quarter effort of running, so maybe teams can get a hold of him, and I think that sort of puts a bit more focus on Adam Cerra to take that next step and see how he responds next time teams tag Walsh, and see if he can get to that consistent A grade sort of performance that Carlton probably were hoping he would develop into, and probably a lot of that blame on him not getting there so far has been due to injury over the last couple of years, but I think that, yeah, Cerra is definitely one to watch, and waiting for him to take that next step and hopefully take a bit of the burden off Walsh and Cripps to dominate every single week, which they obviously are capable of doing, but you would hope that Cerra can, be that third sort of star midfielder for them, which I definitely think he's capable of. And then, yeah, it's probably enough on Carlton, but I'll switch over to Port. I think that, yeah, I'm still a believer. I think that in a similar vein to Sydney, like they've got that midfield. We know what they can do. They started the year really well. They sort of just need some of those role players that they've brought in over the last few years, like your Finlaysons and the key backs they've got at the moment. Like maybe not role players necessarily, but yeah, they need a bit more buy-in. I think that you see. The backline has a bit of flexibility with, like, the two tools they have can obviously match up with most like forward lines, but I would just want to say them to have a little bit more of a point of difference with maybe Lachie Jones playing, I don't know if he can or not, but potentially play more of that Braden Maynard style of stopper, and then stop a roll, and then be able to still use his run to rebound off halfback a bit more. They've got some intercept markers with Ulia obviously, and then they've got great kickers with Kane Farrell and Dan Houston by foot. So they've got those sort of the makings of a really, really good back six. I think it sort of hinges a little bit on how good Asava Radaglia and Alir can be, but I think that Lachie Jones specifically could provide that point of difference that I was sort of talking about, because the scoring up forward, I think, much in the same way that Sydney plays, like less of an issue if all three of Horne-Francis, Rosie and Butters are all playing, their best footy, where they're potentially getting their 25 touches and 1 or 2 goals each, and then you don't need as much lift from the forward line, which isn't a perfect forward line, but there's enough guys up there, Mitch Georgiades and Todd Marshall and Finlayson and players like that. Like it only takes 1 or 2 of them to be playing a lot better footy, and hopefully if they get that buy-in from the rest of the team that they're capable of doing so. But yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it for the moment. I think that other than having a little bit of a drive-by shot at the Fox Footy Premiership window, I think if people are tuning into this, then you'll see that I think this has been discussed online a bit during last week as well, but like this this premiership window that they display is literally just another representation of percentage. So like obviously putting it in a figure or graph makes it a bit more visually pleasing, but I think that if you look at the ladder, you can see who's outperforming other teams on a points basis. So I think that Fox Footy we can probably just explain that a bit better. And not make it the be all and end all, because generally teams that beat other teams by a lot of points are going to win, and they're going to end up winning a premiership as well. So I think that's probably a bit of an overrated figure. But anyway, I'll leave it there, and thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see where we go for round 17, and I'll be back with some more content soon. So thanks for listening.